Well, here we are. Another week of my computer being held together by a binder clip. We'll see how it goes. So it's nice to meet you. I'm Christina KRSTINA. This is the D. Louise book series where we read books and talk about books, no special effects, nothing else. What you see is what you get going on here. We read books, talk about books, and we also, on Fridays, talk about Star Trek Next Generation. I'm a series person. I like series. I like character progression. And each Friday for the last 6 months or so, we've been recapping the episodes on Friday. I hope you are tuning in because I enjoy Star Trek Next Generation. It's a series. There's character progression. We did the Masterpiece Society, we did the Conundrum, we did Power Play, and today we are finishing up Season 5, Disc 4, Episode 216, Ethics. And I've got some things to say. Just a second. Let's see, where is my thing? Okay. Ethics. This is an episode of WORF, and this is a little bit of WORF getting a little closer to Troy, just a smidge, but I have some issues with the episode because this is the second time since, and I think it's this season or late last season, but I'm almost sure it's part of this season. David Ogden Stiers came and he was ready to do the suicide thing. I don't like it that we're talking about it again. That's twice in 1 year. I guess it's to save money on special effects and all that kind of stuff. But we'll see what happens. So I hope you will join me for Ethics. Now, it's so dark. I can't see anything. This is supposed to be a very well-lit cargo bay. There's no voiceover to start the episode at all. It's just Worf and Geordi in the cargo bay, and they're discussing a card game, and Geordi is trying to tell Worf that Troy was bluffing, and Worf didn't feel, he didn't think his hand was strong enough to beat Troy's, and according to Geordi, his hand was much, much better than Troy's. In the meantime, they're talking about there is a chlorine leakage in the bay, and they're trying to find the chlorine leak in the bay. And they inspect some barrels, and Geordi goes off in one direction, and Worf goes in another direction, and the barrels fall on Worf. So I wish I could run this live and we could talk about it as it runs, but there's a ton of copyright issues, and unfortunately we can't do that. I wish we could, but we can't. When Worf wakes up, he's in sickbay. Worf's like, what happened? The containers you were checking fell on you. You're lucky to be alive. Worf tries to sit up but can't. Doctor, I will not attempt to leave sickbay without your approval. The restraining order is not necessary. Dr. Crusher says, Worf, there is no restraining field. Worf says, but I can't move my legs. She says, I know you can't move because one of the containers shattered 7 of your vertebrae and crushed on your spinal cord. I'm afraid there's no way we can repair this kind of injury. And I'm thinking, all their scanning, all their technology, all their stuff they can do, and they can't still fix a spinal cord injury. All their technology, all their know-how, all their knowing how to do all this stuff, and they don't know how to fix it yet. So we get a captain's Log update. Stardate 45587.3, Lieutenant WORF has been removed from active duty following a severe injury. Although a neurospecialist has arrived, Dr. Crusher believes his paralysis may be permanent. The doctor beams aboard, and Dr. Crusher says, "Welcome to the Enterprise, Dr. Russell. I'm Beverly Crusher." Dr. Russell says, "A pleasure. I have some equipment aboard the Potemkin." And then Beverly tells the beam up person to beam her equipment aboard. You don't see the person. So before we get down to business, I wanted to say I had the pleasure of reading your paper on cybernetic regeneration recently. And Dr. Crusher says, "Really, you're the first person to mention it." Dr. Russell says, "I thought it was brilliant." So then we're walking through the hallways. Dr. Russell says, "Your ideas on bioactive interfaces border on revolutionary. It's going to be a pleasure working with you." Dr. Crusher says, "Have you had a chance to review WORF's case history yet?" "Only briefly. I must admit I was a little shocked to find the state of a Klingon neurological medicine to be so primitive." Dr. Crusher says, "A cultural bias. When I contacted the Klingon medical division, they informed me that they usually let the patient die in a case like this. As a result, they've done almost no research on neurological trauma." Russell says, "We'll be in uncharted waters." Dr. Crusher says, "Worf is having a hard time dealing with his injuries. He's always been a difficult patient, but now he's a little tough at first. But I'm sure you'll get to like him after you get to." Dr. Russell cuts her off. "Doctor, I know that as a Starship doctor you have to maintain close ties with patients, but I think it would be best if I maintain a discreet distance. That way I can give you a complete objective opinion regarding treatment." Dr. Crusher says, "Well, yeah, you're probably right." She says, "Good. Well, I believe you said I'll be working in Med Lab 4. And Dr. Crusher's like, "All right, right this way." So then we're back in sick bay, and Riker comes in. "You look pretty good for someone who's been eating sick bay food for 3 days." Worf says, "Please sit down, Commander. Thank you for agreeing to see me in this condition." Riker says, "I'm not a Klingon. I don't think there's any shame in someone being injured." Worf says, "I'm not merely injured, Commander. Dr. Crusher believes my paralysis to be permanent." "I'm sorry," Riker says. Worf says, "I have a personal favor to ask." Riker says, "Name it." Worf says, "I want you to assist me in performing the Habbat ceremony. I want you to help me die." "What?" Riker says. "When a Klingon can no longer stand and face his enemies as a warrior, when he becomes a burden to his friends and family, it is time for the Habbat, time for him to die." "There must be other options," Riker says. Worf says, "No, there are not. I will not live as an object of pity or shame. My life as a Klingon is over." Riker says, "Mr. Worf, I will not help a friend commit suicide." Worf says, "You and I have served together for many years, fought side by side. I know you to be a brave and honorable man. If you truly consider me a friend, help me now. Help me end my life as I have lived it with dignity and honor, please." And again, we keep falling back on this Klingon stuff. And, you know, there will be arguments, and we'll talk about it, that people that get paralyzed leave very good lives. Um, they can still read, write, they can still watch TV, they can still have conversations, they can still go to school, they can go to college, they can spend their minds, they can go in wheelchairs, they can go places. They can do a lot of stuff. They've got technology now to help, braces and walkers and all this kind of crap. But because he was a warrior, and because he was a fighter, and because that's his mental status as a Klingon, although I will bring this up again, and I will keep bringing this up forever, he was raised by humans, and he was raised on Earth. So him and all these Klingons is just stuff that he's researched. It's not, he didn't actually live on Klingon for X number of years. He lived with human parents. He got all this crap from books and research and the computer system. And it's just he lived with humans long enough to know what humans do. So some of this he's so firmly set in the Klingon ways. It's all in his head. It really is, and I don't like it. So then we're back in sickbay, and Dr. Crusher, the cortical spinal tract has continued to deteriorate over the last 72 hours despite CPK enzymatic therapy. What about alkaline treatment? Russell asks. Ineffective, Crusher says. Over-designed Klingon anatomy, 23 ribs, 2 livers, 8 chambered hearts, double-line neuropia matter. I've never seen so many unnecessary redundancies in one body. Unnecessary, Dr. Crusher says. The Klingons refer to it as the black hole. Almost every vital function in their bodies has a built-in redundancy in case any primary organ or system fails. Isn't that really good? If your first heart fails, your second one will pick up. Think of all the heart people that would be living today. Think of all the lung people that would be living today. Think about it. You get one set of breasts removed, get a new set. And it'd be already there. I think. I don't know. Dr. Wilson, it's a good design in theory, but in practice, all the extra organs means that much more can go wrong. Let me show you something. I've been experimenting with DNA-based generators. This is a genotronic replicator. It reads the DNA coding of damaged organs and translates it into a specific set of replicant instructions and then begins to grow a replacement. Dr. Crusher says, I read some of the preliminary work you've done. The early results have been very encouraging, Beverly. The genotronic replicator can create a completely new neural conduit for your Lieutenant WORF. Replace his entire spinal column, Beverly asked. Exactly. Instead of splicing and pasting together broken connections like a couple of glorified tailors, we create a new living system. Dr. Crusher says, I had no idea you were already using this on humanoids. I haven't been, but this will be the first time. The first time? Even as a holographic patient would balk at those odds. She says she has a 37% success rate. Sooner or later, it has to be tried in a living patient. You're talking about a spinal column. Even before we could replace it, we would have to remove the existing one, and we don't know enough about Klingon neurological medicine to reattach him. If something goes wrong, he'll die. I agree it has remarkable potential, but you're still in the most preliminary stages of research. No, I'm afraid I can't justify the risk to WORF. We'll have to do more conventional approaches. Russell says, you're probably right, it's too radical an approach. And Picard calls Beverly to the bridge at this point. So then Picard tells Dr. Crusher, the transport ship Denver has struck a gravenite mine left over from the Cardassian War. They've sustained heavy damage. Riker says their last message said they were attempting to crash land on one of the planets in the Mikoros system. We should arrive in under 7 hours. Crusher says how many people were aboard. Data says the Denver standard crew complement is 23, but they were transporting 517 colonists to Beloiti sector. I'll need to convert all 3 shuttle bays to emergency triage centers. I'll also want all civilians with medical training to report for duty. Picard says, make it so. Riker says, Captain, can I talk to you? And they go off to his office, Riker and Picard. So then Riker is talking to Picard about WORF. I have always tried to keep an open mind, not to judge someone else's culture by my own, but for me to be part of this ceremony. Picard says, I understand from Dr. Crusher that Worf will never regain the use of his legs. Riker says, that doesn't mean his life is over. Picard says, that's a very human perspective, Will. For a Klingon in Worf's position, his life is over. I can't accept that. Will, if you were dying, if you were terminally ill with an incurable disease and facing the remaining few days of your life in pain, would you come to look on death as a release? Anybody say Dr. Kevorkian? Worf isn't dying and he is not in pain. He would live a long life. Picard, you or I could learn to live with that disability, but not Worf. His life ended when those containers fell on him. We don't have to agree with it. We don't have to understand it, but we have to respect his beliefs. Riker, I can respect his belief, but he's asking me to take an active role in his committing suicide. He's asking you for help because you're a friend, Picard says. That means you're going to have to make your decision based on friendship. Right, which Riker says, which leads me back where I started. Will, look, I'm sorry I cannot help you make this decision, but I can tell you the Klingons choose their friends with great care. If he didn't know he could count on you, he would never have asked. So then Alexander is talking to Troy. Why won't you let me see him? Alexander, I told you it's not my decision. Your father doesn't want to. I don't believe you. My father wants to see me. You're the one keeping him from me. Troy, I think you know that's not true. Then why can't I see him? Come here. He's been injured and he's embarrassed, and have anyone see him now would make him feel worse. If it were you, Alexander, this is part of that Klingon stuff, isn't it? My mother always said Klingons had a lot of dumbass ideas about honor. Well, it's very important to Troy says, Alexander, the Klingon stuff is important to your father. Alexander says, well, it isn't very important to me. I don't care about being Klingon. I just want to see my father. Troy says, it's been a long day. Why don't you get ready for bed and we'll talk about it in the morning. So then Troy goes to talk to Worf. Alexander is scared, confused, hurt, all because his father is refusing to see him. Worf says, you know why I left those instructions. Yes, I do. It's not the Klingon way, right? It's a question of honor, and I would ask you to respect my wishes in this matter, counselor. Troy says, all I care about in this moment is a little boy who's terrified that he's going to lose his father. Troy said, maybe it's time you stop lying here worrying about your honor and started thinking about someone else like your son. Yeah, what happens to Alexander? Because is he gonna live with that example that his father's a quitter, that his father didn't try anything, he just flat out quit and chose suicide over life with Alexander, over being there for Alexander's important moments, graduating from school, getting married, having children, grandchildren. His father chose the coward's way out. Worf may think it's full of honor, but it's not. It's the coward's way out. It really is. But at this moment, when she finishes her conversation, the doctor, Crusher, and Russell come in. And Dr. Crusher says, this is Dr. Toby Russell. She's from Adeline Neurological Institute. She specializes in spinal injuries like yours. We've discussed a variety of surgical procedures. I'm afraid none of them will repair the spinal cord, but we found a way for you to regain much of your mobility. We can implant a series of neurotransducers in your lower torso and legs. They're designed to pick up the electrical impulses from your brain and stimulate the corresponding muscles. With a little work, you'll eventually regain 60 to 70% of your motor control. Russell says this first step would be to fit your legs with these monitor assist units like this one. They're a training device. Once you've mastered using them, we'll move to this implant. And they put it on his leg and it wobbles. And Warp is like, no, I will not live like this. Crusher says, these are very sophisticated devices. With enough time, they will give you 60% of my mobility. No, I will be not lurching through the corridors like some half Klingon machine, the object of ridicule and disgust. Dr. Crusher says, perhaps this all seems a bit frightening to you now. I want you to take some time before making a decision. Think about it. Dr. Crusher might as well let him operate like Russell wants to, in my opinion, because he wants to die anyway. So why not die in an attempt to live? Why not give it the old heave ho there? Because in my opinion, Worf is taking the coward's way right out. It may be the honorable in a Klingon life, but it's a chicken's way. The brave person would live to endure, live to see Alexander grow up, live to be there for his graduation and his college and his marriage and his first love and his breakups with his girlfriend. He would want to live. And as long as he could, even 60%, he could walk a little bit. There's millions of people today that, because of arthritis and other issues, are also limited in mobility. And then there's lots of military that come home and they're also limited in mobility and got prosthetics and all this kind of stuff. So in my WORF is just giving up. He is just literally giving up. Come here. You think he's giving up too? My co-host. If you see my book videos, you know my co-host. So then Dr. Crusher and Russell have a conversation. I'll just leave it here for them. Because Russell brings up to WORF her idea about the jetonic replication. And when they walk out, Beverly's pissed off at her for bringing it up. I thought we discussed jetonics. We did. I also thought we decided against recommending. You heard him. He'd rather die than live with the implants. I just gave him a better option than suicide. He's grasping for straws and you're giving him one. Now, instead of dealing with his paralysis, he's going to be thinking about this miracle cures of yours. Russell says there's a chance this could work, and if it does, it'll be a major breakthrough in genetics that will change a lot of people's lives. Dr. Crusher says, you're using the desperation of an injured man as an excuse to try a procedure that could not go under normal circumstances. I checked with Starfleet Medical. They've turned your request down to testronics on humanoids 3 times already. Dr. Russell says, you are really going to hide behind the rules of some bureaucracy? Beverly, your patient's life is at stake here. Dr. Crusher says, look, before you do any of this, and she's going to, she gets called to the bridge. But I think she should let her do it because otherwise WORF is going to commit suicide. So if he dies, at least this way he's dying trying. His other way is he's dying quitting. He's taking the chicken's way out, in my point of view. It should be Klingon way to endure and to survive, not give up and die. That's the coward's way. Picard tells Dr. Crusher that the survivors from Denver have arrived, and Dr. Russell offers to help. I just thought I'd show this. Data really doesn't have any lines here, but Picard calls Dr. Crusher to the cargo bay. The people from the survivors will be beaming aboard. So then Troy brings Alexander to see WORF, and WORF has got one of those leg bands on, and he's standing up all straight and tall, trying to put on a show for the kid, show a brave face. So Alexander says, Deanna said you hurt your back, that you couldn't walk. Worf says, I'm still struggling with my injury. Alexander said, I was worried about you. Worf says, there is much to discuss. This will be difficult times ahead. You must be strong. I understand, Alexander says. Good. As Klingons, we must always be prepared for any, and Worf falls to the floor. And Worf is embarrassed that he has fallen to the floor, and he has Troy take Alexander away because he doesn't want Alexander to see him weak. And I think that would be a lesson to Alexander that, yes, everybody falls down, everybody makes mistakes, everybody is vulnerable. It's part of life. Failing is part of life. We can't be perfect all the time. Nobody is perfect. And I think it would be good to see Alexander see his father struggle, see what his father is going through, be there for his father, so that if Alexander has a situation, someone might be there for Alexander, or he could be there for someone else. There's lessons to be learned here. Instead, Worf is teaching his son that he's a coward, that he doesn't want to be seen by his son. He doesn't want his son to see him this way, and he's embarrassed that his son has to see him fall down. There are millions and millions and millions of elderly people out there. that don't want their kids to see them fall down. There's millions and millions of military out there learning how to walk today with prosthetics and other injuries that have come back from war. And they've got to learn to walk. They've got to learn to deal with it. They've got to have, therapy, physical and mental therapy. Some of them make it, some of them don't. Some of them do choose suicide, some of them don't. But I would like to think that technology is advancing and we'll be able to fix and more of these things as time gets to here. But human nature, and yeah, he's a Klingon, but he's still got those woe is me, feel sorry for me, um, Klingon ways. So they're in the cargo bay, and Beverly notices that one of the patients did not survive. What happened here? He went into neurometaphysics shock. From lazorazine? That's unusual. He couldn't take laporazine. His blood pressure was too low. I had to try a different treatment. A Matharial series? No. I tried a new ribotherapy I've been working with. It's called Barathium. I had some good results. You used this man to test one of your theories? Barathium is decades ahead of Laporium and Matharial. Matharial would have saved his life. His injuries were too severe. I don't think any conventional treatment would have saved him. The point is, you didn't even try standard methods. I made the choice I thought gave him the best chance of surviving. Isn't that what you would have done? I think you used the situation in order to test one of your theories like you're trying to do with WORF. That's what this is about, isn't it, Lieutenant WORF? I'm offering her chance to recover fully, a chance you can't give him. What's this about the kind of medicine you seem to practice? I make no excuses for my approach to medicine. I don't like losing a patient any more than you do. I'm looking down toward a road, doctor. This man didn't die for nothing. The data that generated is invaluable. It will eventually help save thousands of lives. I doubt that will help his family, Beverly says. Let me ask you this. If some years from now thorium therapy were to save the life of someone you love, would you still condemn me? I will not be drawn into a hypothetical argument, Doctor. Your research on this ship is over. You're relieved of all medical duties until further notice. Is that clear? She says clear. So Picard comes to see Beverly. Doctor, I'm on my way to Lincoln on your patient. Be my guest, just don't expect a lot of conversation. He's in full Klingon mode. Honorable, strong, and closed-minded. Picard says, I understand that you've relieved Dr. Russell of duty. That's right. She's irresponsible. I won't have her practicing medicine on this ship. Beverly, maybe you should consider letting her go ahead with the genotronic procedure. How can you say that? She's had a theory based on little empirical knowledge and a lot of supposition. If he can't make full recovery, Worf is going to kill himself. Not in my sick bay, he won't. I'll put him in restraining field and post security around his door before I let him commit suicide. How long? Picard says. A week, a month, a year? If I have to, suicide is not an option. Putting aside for a moment the fact that a paraplegic can live a full life, there is also conventional therapy that could restore much of his mobility. But not all of it, Picard says. Not all of it, Beverly says. There are some things I can't fix. Klingon or no, he's going to have to accept his condition. Beverly, he can't make the journey you're asking of him. You want him to go from contemplating suicide to accepting his condition and living with the disability, but it's too far. The road between covers a lifetime of values, beliefs. He can't do it, Beverly. Besides, he came part of the way. Maybe he can be persuaded to forego the ritual in order to take the chance in regaining the kind of life he needs. A Klingon may not be good at accepting defeat, but he knows all about taking risks. Dr. Crusher says the first tenet of good medicine is never make the patient any worse. Right now, Worf is alive and functioning. If he goes into that operation, he could come out a corpse. Picard says, this may not be good medicine, but for Worf, it may be his only choice. So you see where he's leaning. So Riker goes in to see Worf. I'm ready, Commander. I've been studying this ritual of yours. Do you know what I've decided? I think it's despicable. I hate everything about it. The casual disregard for life, the way it tries to cloak suicide in some glorious notion of honor. I may have to respect your beliefs, but I don't have to like them. It's not something I expect you to understand. No, all you expect me to do is bring you the knife and then walk away so you can kill yourself in peace. Well, I'm not going to make it easy for you. It's not easy for me, but each of us must die in our own time and my time. Remember Sandal, hit by a disruptor blast 2 years ago? She lived for about a week. Fang Li, Meryl Astor, Tasha Yar. How many men and women, how many friends have we watched die? I've lost count. Every one of them, every single one fought for life until the very end. I do not welcome death, Commander. Are you sure? Because I get the sense you're feeling pretty noble about the whole thing. Look at me. Aren't I courageous? Aren't I honorable Klingon? Let me remind you of something. A Klingon does not put his desires above those of his family or friends. How many people on this ship consider you a friend? How many owe you their lives? Have you ever thought about how you've affected the people around you, how we might feel about your dying? Will you or will you not help me with the habit? You are my friend, and in spite of everything I've said, if it were my place, I would probably help you. But I've been studying Klingon ritual and Klingon law, and I've discovered that it's not my place to fill that role. According to tradition, the honor falls to a family member, probably the oldest son. That's impossible. He is a child. The son of a Klingon is a man the day he first holds a blade. True. Alexander is not fully Klingon. He is part human. That's an excuse, Riker says. What you mean is it would be too hard for you to look at your son and tell him to bring you the knife. Watch you stab it into your heart. Then pull the knife from your chest and wipe your blood on his sleeve. That's the rite of death, isn't it? Well, I'm sorry, Mr. Worf. I can't help you. There's only one person on this ship who can. And then he sends Alexander in. So then Alexander goes to see Worf. You said you wanted to see me? I need you to help me. Anything, Father. I have taught you about Klingon customs, the belief which we value. According to tradition, I must take my life after suffering this kind of injury, but I've decided to break with that tradition. I've decided to live. I am glad, Father. I must undergo a dangerous operation. I may still die, but it will not be of my own hand. And he gives Alexander the knife to return to the quarters. Then we get a voiceover. Starfleet Officers Log Supplemental. Any further consultation with Starfleet Medical and a great deal of soul searching, I have reluctantly granted Worf's request to undergo the genotronic procedure. Okay, so then we're back in the sick bay room. Alexander is telling his father that they're learning multiplications today. The teacher said, I'm faster than anyone else in my room. And this is my point. If he had committed suicide, Alexander would not be able to give him this information. He would not be telling how his day went, sharing the good times and the bad times with him if he had chosen suicide. The nurse comes in and Worf tells him we will speak again. Alexander leaves. And then Worf has a moment with Troy. If I die, he must be cared for. I'll make sure he reaches your parents' home safely, she says. No, they're elderly. They cannot care for Alexander Council. I have a serious request to make of you. Would you consider? You want me to raise Alexander? I have come to have a great respect for you, Deanna. You have been most helpful in guiding me since Alexander's survival. I can't imagine anyone would be better parent to my son, if it is too much to ask. And then Troy says she'd be honored to take care of Alexander. Okay, so then they got Worf on his stomach. They're operating on his spine. Dr. Russell says focal the directional beams on the anterior and posterior spinal cord. Crusher says focus. Russell says initiate. Rusher says all neural connections below the cervical vertebrae have been separated, and they do some more. They do some more stuff, and they're operating. And then we have one of those conversations between Picard and Riker. They're trying to stay focused on the business at hand. and worry about WORF at the same time. So then Riker says, I've notified Starfleet that our survey of Sector 37628 will be delayed at least a week while we drop off survivors from the Denver. Picard says, good, I understand from Mr. LaForge that there's a minor fluctuation in the starboard warp coil. Riker says, I've scheduled a stress simulation routine for this afternoon to check it out. Has there been any word? Picard says, no. They're all just sitting there in the waiting room, hypothetical waiting room, waiting for word on the medical procedure. They're all stressing out 6 ways to Sunday. So, they took his spine out, and then they've got him on brain life support. We need that nowadays. We've got heart and lung life support and pumping the oxygen. Do we have brain support? Do we have that technology yet? Well, they've got them on brain support, and they're operating. And I'll point out, they have done all of this surgery. They have cut the poor man open. There's not a spot of blood on them. Nowhere is there blood on them. Preliminary electronic scans are complete. Russell says initiating the DNA sequencer. Reading the initial sequence at 10 to the 9th base pairs. Once we've passed the first 2 levels, we'll begin encoding sequence. And there's a bunch of beeps that go off. Russell says the scanner is having trouble reading the Cleon dorsal root ganglia. Dot Crusher says, did this show up in your simulations? Yes, but I thought I'd made sufficient adjustments. Bring me the Dartrol scanner. I'll scan this stuff manually. Awaga says 1 hour, 43 minutes until primary brain dysfunction. Troy is out in the hallway trying to keep Alexander comfortable while he waits. Retractile the spinal muscle. Got it. Watch the proximal nerve. I see. Make sure the cranial segment is at least 15 centimeters from the brain. 20 cc's are Provolene. Okay, release the retractors on the spinal thing. How much longer can we keep them on life support? 27 minutes. Cover, close. They disengage all the life support, and Worf dies, and everybody panics. So they come out, and they tell him that his father has died. So Alexander goes in to see Worf, and Worf moves, and they start some medical stuff again. And Beverly refers to the redundancy. He probably has redundant nerves and stuff like that took a few minutes to activate, and that's what the delay was. So they start cardiovalescent, and everything turns out just peachy keen. So then Dr. Russell is all excited. Her theory worked, but that was only because he had the redundancy stuff. Russell says, well, I say your patient's recovery is going well. You're not even going to acknowledge what I did for him, are you? You just can't admit that it was my research that made this possible. I'm delighted that Worf is going to recover, Beverly says. You gambled, he won. Not all of your patients are so lucky. You scare me, doctor. You risk your patients' lives and justify it in the name of research. Genuine research takes time, sometimes a lifetime of painstaking, detailed work in order to get any results. Not for you. You take shortcuts right through living tissue, and you put your research ahead of your patients' lives. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a violation of our most sacred trust. I'm sure your work will be hailed as a stunning breakthrough. Enjoy your laurels, doctor. I'm not sure I could. So Worf is practicing walking with the parallel bars. Dr. Crusher says, this is going to take time, Worf. Your muscles are still sorting out their new singles. Don't rush it. He falls to the ground, and Alexander comes over to him, and it's a cute little scene. Let's see if we can get it. So then Alexander goes over and helps his father. It's a cute little scene. So that's the end of ethics. That's the end of disc 4. So I hope you will go back and watch all the other episodes with me. We did them all. Masterpiece, Conundrum, Power Play, Ethics, and now we are on to Disc 5, Season 5, Disc 5, Episode 217. I hope you stay tuned with me. Thank you very much. Please check out the If Then episode later this afternoon. And don't forget Flashback Mondays. I work really hard on that. And also my daily book reviews. And if you're still here at this juncture, check out all the Pussycat videos too. Thank you.